Hare Krishna. So I'm very fortunate to have this opportunity to remember our dear God brother, friend of all, Pankajanghri prabhu, who for so many years has been, maybe we took for granted. We always expected whenever we go to Mayapur, Pankajanghri prabhu and of course his dear twin brother, Janani Prabhu, would always be there. And now, unfortunately, at least from my perspective, we will not have that opportunity again to get his association in Mayapur, at least not in the form of physical association. I'll start talking a few words. I'm not qualified. I don't have any devotion to really understand and express the depth of his contribution to Srila Prabhupada's movement. But I'm going to start by going back to my early days in Krishna consciousness movement in London. And it involves Pankajanghri prabhu, who at that time, I can't even remember his name, maybe Roy or something, I can't remember. But I joined the Krishna temple in Bury Place in early 1972. And very shortly after joining, I was asked to take responsibility under the direction of Sudhajaya Prabhu to run the Spiritual Sky incense business in the UK. At that time, it was in a small, we were doing in the temple, the incense. And then we moved to a factory in East London, a place called Old Street. And there we had our production unit and distribution unit. Basically, I was overseeing there was only two of us. Sudhajaya was elsewhere at that time and making incense. And it would have been about this time in 1972, exactly, of course, I cannot remember, but about this time, the temple sent one young man to help me. Young, we call everyone a boy in those days, even if they were 50 years old. He was older physically than myself, although we didn't really, I can't remember ever asking him his age, but he was definitely older. And so they sent this young boy who was maybe, I can't even remember if he was living in the temple or he was visiting Bury Place. This was about May 72. And it, of course, eventually, this young man who was sent to help me became Pankajanghri prabhu. So for quite some time, I don't know how long, weeks, months, maybe a month, two, I just don't know. But he was coming practically every day to help me manufacture in Spiritual Sky incense. And, you know, in those days, it was perhaps, we didn't really have that kind of vision. And the vision was respecting all and seeing all devotees as being, you know, special, very special. I don't know who they were, but to even imagine this young man who was coming daily just to help make incense would become, you know, practically speaking, we can say, along with his brother, the greatest Sankirtan devotees in our movement. Was very hard to even, I never think about these things. But anyway, he was, I must say, when he was helping me, he was like an angel. And if we have any concept of an angel, but he was one of those angelic persons, at least in my vision, very sweet and wonderful to work with, even in those early days. Now that went on, as I said, for a few weeks, and then my service changed. And I really don't know much what happened to Pankajanghri prabhu after that. I've heard that he stayed he actually joined eventually in the manor and took initiation, but I was away on traveling Sankirtan most of that time, and I was not staying at the manor in the early days either, so I didn't really get his association, or if I did, I can't remember it. I have vague memories of Harinam Sankirtan, but I can't remember it, to be honest. And my next time that I had the good fortune to see Pankajanghri prabhu, who by then, of course, was initiated, was in 1976, and that was in Mayapur. By then he was Pujari, along with his twin brother. And we, a big group of us, went to the Mayapur festival, and it was nice to catch up with him. He remembered me very well. We had a little time together there. I remember in one specific time, I remember one night I was in the temple. It was late night. Last arti had just finished in the temple, maybe 9:15 or something. And I was really sick. I had a very, like most of us, some kind of fever. You know, it wasn't malaria, it was something else, but I had a very high temperature and I couldn't eat. And I actually, what it was like dysentery. I was passing stool, almost nonstop. So somehow or another, I made my way to the temple. We were leaving the next day for Vrindavan. And supposed to be, even if he was sick, we still had to go along with it. And I went into the temple and just holding myself. And Pankajanghri prabhu was doing the last arti, I guess. He came out afterwards and he said, because, he remembered me quite well from those days in London, in Bury Place. And he said, please, Janananda Prabhu, here, take this. And he gave me a big plate of Mahaprasadam from Radha Madhava. And that was the first time I had Mahaprasad in Mayapur, because normally it was for the members or the sannyasis or whatever. And it's a whole plate. And I thought, oh no, why now? And I've got this dysentery type feeling and my stomach's going crazy. But he gave me that prasadam and I honored that prasadam and everything became okay. The dysentery just immediately stopped. It was like magic. And he had this effect. It wasn't just a physical thing, or because he had this personal effect, in my experience, of in his association, no matter what was going on, you felt you belonged in ISKCON. You felt you belonged in the association of devotees under Srila Prabhupada's protection. He was so absorbed, as many have obviously accounted, 24 hours, never did he stop. And I noticed that when he was with me with the incense, right in the very beginning, usually people would come, space out, go away, you have to call them back. But he would just be so steady in his service, and he would, he wouldn't waver, even making incense. I could count on him. He was very, very reliable person. Now, in the beginning, I mentioned about his Sankirtan, greatest Sankirtan devotees in our movement. Well, we may not see them in that perspective usually, because when we talk of Sankirtan devotees, we often talk of book distributors or big kirtan leaders or something. But to be honest, Sankirtan devotee is not just a performer who achieves results or maybe even inspires others by their results, but one who is truly connected to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan. And we're other than Mayapur, the heart of our Sankirtan movement. And for sure, the heart of this Sankirtan movement is manifested in the form of Pankajanghri prabhu and Jananivas, because their presence there is giving strength, is giving inspiration, giving the determination for all devotees in this movement, whether we know it or whether we don't know it. This is what's happening from the heart. The energy, the purity is manifesting throughout our society and inspiring us all. When one goes to Mayapur and one sees, just to see Pankajanghri prabhu sitting in the class attentively with his Bhagavatam, relishing every single word of the speaker, and just completely churning that nectar. When we see him or participate with him, I remember many times the great fortune of being able to dance with Pankajanghri prabhu, that not just together with others, of course, as well, but sometimes just the two of us in the middle, dancing. It really is an experience. And a unique factor about the association of Pankajanghri prabhu and Jananivas prabhus is that they're devoid, I would say, as much as I've ever experienced anyone, devoid of, in their relationships with others, of any false ego whatsoever. And when you associate with them, you get a little glimpse, maybe a little taste of what it's like to have, just to exist for the service of Srila Prabhupada and Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. I felt that in their presence many times I say many times in the past, not so much recently, but many times in the past, we had the good fortune to honor prasadam in their presence, in their room. And it was because of that good fortune of having his opportunity to serve him or associate with him in the early days of his coming to the temple in London. He was always so kind to give me that little opportunity to honor Mahaprasad in their presence and to sometimes go on parikrama and dance together. And this is a great fortune which will never leave our hearts, of having these little moments, these little special little moments with Pankajanghri Prabhu in Mayapur. So after those early exchanges in Mayapur, I would go every year, practically speaking, after 76 almost, for a long time. And every year getting those opportunities to dance with Pankajanghri Prabhu or take prasadam, etc. For quite some time, it's been, let's say, rather minimal. And I'm very unfortunate not to have taken that opportunity to get his association. But the memory, another aspect of Pankajanghri Prabhu, is just thinking about him. We remember pure devotional service. We remember what the purpose of our being here in this movement is, to dedicate our lives to the very last breath, to the service of Srila Prabhupada and Srila Prabhupada's mission. As Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes, when we hear about the pastimes, the activities, the life of great devotees, and I do hope that somebody will write a biography about Pankajanghri Prabhu, including the early days. I don't know much about his life before he joined the Hare Krishna movement. I know he went to India, and I know where he was born, well, not the house, but in London, very close to the manor, actually, where he was born, and his brother in Barnet is the closest London town, practically, to the manor, very close. And but Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes how, by hearing about these great personalities, one develops determination, confidence, and satisfaction. And it's very satisfying, so satisfying just to remember him and to be in his presence. He'll live forever in our movement. He's one of those special, very special devotees like Jayananda Prabhu and others who have set standards like Acharya. Others may preach, wonderful, and maybe sannyas, take disciples and so on. But some devotees, they set the actual standard of devotion. And he's one of those devotees. He was established in our movement, the real essence of the Sankirtan movement. The dedication, complete dedication to one's service. Unflinching, uninterrupted, devotional service to Srila Prabhupada. So we remain ever indebted. Tremendous humility. How was that? Because when a devotee is completely fixed at the lotus feet of their spiritual master, then naturally they're humble. This is the state of pure humility. And Pankajanghri Prabhu certainly was one of these very special souls who lived his life not with no artificial airs, no desire for name and fame, no desire for recognition, position, anything. Just living to bring pleasure to Srila Prabhupada and the Vaishnava community. And so many devotees have had in Mayapur so much a fortunate association. I'm not really one of those. I'm somewhere way out there on the periphery, but whatever little good fortune we've got, we thank from the bottom of our heart Pankajanghri prabhu for sharing that with all of us, and continue to share that throughout our lives. So maybe you'd like to, I don't know if I can say much more, but if you'd like to ask anything, maybe I can expand on something, I don't know.
Yes, Maharaj. Yes, Maharaj. Thank you very much. And actually, I can see the effect of the association with the devotee like Pankajanghri Prabhu and his brother on your life, you know. Can you explain a little more about we can say the spiritual principle of association?
Wow. Yeah, well, this is it, isn't it? I mean, much of the time when we associate, it's there's always some kind of spiritual aspect. Much of the time it's practical. Especially, I remember in earlier years of our movement, how our association was very practical, and it was very, you could say, from the point of view of service, very meaningful, because we mostly focused about that, you know, how to inspire each other to chant, how to inspire each other to render service, to keep engaged, to stay in the movement, whatever it was, kind of practical. And then other types of association go deeper, obviously. And with Pankajanghri Prabhu, he had this unique, my experience, this unique capacity to associate with anyone on a level. And this is one of the new qualities, we could say, of a great soul. I don't want to impose words, but it is the quality of an Uttama Bhagavat or a pure devotee of the Lord, if they're in the mood of reciprocating or preaching in this world, but they reciprocate, as we see with Sanatana Goswami, how he would be able to reciprocate with even villagers in a way which would inspire them to progress. And we saw that with Pankajanghri Prabhu, where there was children, old ladies, grihastas, sannyasis, brahmacharis, guests, people in general, whatever it was. You had this natural, and it's not an imposition, like maybe in some cases, but it's not an imposition. It's just a nat because he's so pure and so straight. It's in the sense there's nothing else in the heart. It's not that there's any other motive. So when one is on that platform of consciousness or acting, then naturally one's presence, one becomes diro rajino priyo priya karo. One becomes a friend to all and non-envious. Of course, in this world, it doesn't matter who you are, some people will always be envious. But that doesn't mean the devotee is envious or at fault necessarily, though they may consider themselves. And Pankajanghri Prabhu was like this. He had I could see no envy in him whatsoever, and no pride, and always equal to all, and always encouraging everybody. And this is a very unique aspect, a sign of a very advanced Vaishnava, is that they're able to inspire all. Everybody knows how, pretty much everyone who had his association felt very inspired and very happy to come into his association because he was carrying the Lord in his heart. He's like, as we see in the Bhagavatam, when Vidura returned from his pilgrimage, how he was addressed by Yudhishthira and the members of the assembly as likened to a place of pilgrimage because he's carrying the Lord in his heart. And there was no doubt about that. Pankajanghri Prabhu was carrying his Lord, whether it was Radha Madhava or Lord Nrsimhadev, of course, Srila Prabhupada, always in his heart. He'd embrace them, embrace their lotus feet, and would share that without even having to make any, you could say, extraneous effort. It was a natural feature. Spiritual life is natural. It's not something which we practice, but it's not something which ultimately it becomes natural. And he was to me, a very natural person. Even when I first met him, I thought he was a very natural person too. I thought I was with a person who was what he was. He wasn't trying to put on a show or, expect anything from what he was doing, And sometimes we have this expectancy. But I don't say I didn't have enough experience or association to say otherwise, but whatever association I had with him, I always felt like that. Here's a person who's serving because it's his nature. He's not expecting anything in return for his service, except for the opportunity to serve more. And his love for kirtan. I mean, he's just amazing. He couldn't stop dancing when the kirtan. Well, of course, sometimes we have other reasons we may not dance, but in general, whenever there was an opportunity, he would always be just naturally flowing in to dance. And of course, we shared something else in common too, which was drama. He loved to. I think we did a few dramas together in Navadvip, or maybe in Vrindavan, maybe also. He came to Vrindavan a few times, here and there. We met in India, but he had this amazing we had this in common, spontaneous attraction for presenting Krishna consciousness in a dramatic way, not just philosophical way. Just very pure and simple. It's just simple for the simple. Krishna consciousness is not complicated. We just have to embrace it, that's all. And that's so simple. He was one of those who completely embraced devotional service. Sorry if I went off the track there.
No.
But we didn't go too far off the track in remembering Pankajanghri prabhu.
Thank you very much, Maharaj, for your sharing your experience, realization about that special personality. And also, it's very nice to hear the relationship between advanced Vaishnava when they taste in a natural way.
Yeah, he was certainly an advanced Vaishnava, that's for sure. And we know by remembering such advance, it's very rare to get such association. But to Sangha, it's very, very, very rare to get that association of such great devotees like this. And as we all know, it's oftentimes after they leave the world that we appreciate. We sometimes take for granted. But I would say, at least from my experience with Pankajanghri Prabhu, it didn't happen with that. I couldn't help but appreciate him practically from day one. But all along, it wasn't like afterwards we start to realize how fortunate we were. We may realize or feel great pain and separation, or realize we could have been more fortunate. But I think all along we had that experience that we were lucky and blessed to have his association for so long in this world and this movement, and specifically inspiring us all, and continue to inspire us all too. Just to remember his level of devotion is just so inspiring, and his sweet association, how sweet he was with everybody and kind, and it's very humble. Yeah. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Pankajanghri prabhu ki jai.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Benanivas prabhu ki jai.
Jai.
You know, I'll just let one more thing. I feel more inspired to go to Mayapur now. Even though he may not be there in terms of being able to literally associate with him. But yeah, something very special about this pastime. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna. One more very deep, heartfelt feeling in relationship to Pankajanghri Prabhu. I feel he was very unique. He was completely offenseless. He didn't commit offense to anyone, at least not wantingly for sure. This is very unique. Something Prabhupada said, purity is the force. We all know what Prabhupada said about these two wonderful devotees. I don't need to repeat that. But offenseless, that would be the word I would use. And this is the Sudanam, this is the association of somebody that we hanker for, the devotees who's chanting is without offense. His dedication from decades of service to the Dham, to the devotees, to the deities. And we can see this is a result of this dedication of service. One becomes offenseless. Vaishnav. Srila Pankajanghri prabhu ki jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.